Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to those of you in different time zones. Thank you for joining us on the SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel, and you can go ahead and do that right now. Today, we present the President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream, Finding Your Talent Team. We'll be pausing throughout as we have with us interpreters Courtney Nimmersheim and Joe Rivera, who will be translating today's program into American Sign Language. Courtney and Joe will be switching off periodically throughout today's discussion. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded, and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, along with more great content. So thanks again for joining us, and please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon.
Thank you, Pam. Hello there, everybody. I'm so grateful you could be with us today. Today, we're going to be talking about finding good representation because it is one of the most important career decisions we can make. Unfortunately, it can also be one of the most difficult, whether it's choosing an agent, a publicist, an attorney. It's a choice that can have a really lasting impact on a career trajectory. The relationship, in terms of achieving its fullest potential, you have to find the right fit. When you're assembling your dream team, there's a lot to consider, including the kind of work you plan to do, where you are in your career, and your immediate and long-term needs. So when is the right time to figure out filling these roles? What should you look for? How do you find out what's the right fit? So to answer these questions today, we've assembled our own dream team of experts. Moderating will be Ryan Walker, who is a social media expert and a member of SAG-AFTRA's National Next Gen Performers and Communications Committees. Ryan is the founder and CEO of social media firm TSMA Consulting, which has grown to become one of the nation's leading social media education and management firms. They have notable clients such as Apple, Adobe. It's very exciting. Ryan educates globally on social media about brand development, digital growth for creators, as well as having done more than 40 brand partnerships on his own personal Instagram account. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ryan. Thank you for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca. Such a pleasure to be here. This topic here today is one that's very close to my heart. You know, I often speak to performers about running your career like a business. And as a business, what is it like to find the right team? How do you identify the right team? How do you know when it's the right time? So it's a thrill to be here and to introduce our very esteemed and very incredible guests that we have here today. So first and foremost, we have Angela Strange, who is an agent at the Osbrink agency. She's a vice president of operations. Osbrink agency is a boutique agency that provides the entertainment industry with many of the most visible clients in film, television, commercials, voiceover, and print. She has more than 20 years experience in the agency business. Thank you, Angela, for being here. We have Dina LaPolt, is the founder and owner of LaPolt Law, a law firm that serves the music industry. So she represents music creators, celebrities, music industry executives, influencers, and owners and controllers of intellectual property. Prior to becoming an agent, she was a musician, a talent buyer, concert promoter, and a personal manager, all of which allowed her to bring a unique insight to the practice of law. She also helped found the songwriter advocacy group, Songwriters of North America. We have Jennifer Abel as vice president at Jonesworks, a full-service public relations, marketing, and branding consultancy in New York and Los Angeles. She provides or represents an elite roster of talent, lifestyle, and consumer brands. Prior to this, she served as a publicist and vice president at public relations firm PMK BNC in LA for more than a decade. Jennifer has a background as a reporter, editor, and producer. So an awesome, awesome panel here today. So as we jump in, and I think a good place to start is, you know, what is when you're starting to work with a client for the first time, what is that process? You know, what are you looking for, and what is it like to begin with a new client? And I think we can just start, Angela, and we'll just go from there.
It can be very exciting. We like to be excited about the people we work with and to consider the possibilities of where we can help them go with their dreams. So, initially it's a little bureaucratic as we are trying to make sure that we have the proper information for the different places that we submit, the different online services, that we have the pictures and the resume is cleaned up if anything's necessary. Just trying to get everything up to speed as quickly as possible as the different people on the team are sharing their information. But otherwise, it's a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I second everything that Angela said. On the PR side, it always starts with a passion. We have to be excited about the client. We have to be into the projects that they're into. We have to have the same kind of inline passions in order for us to really bring some good work to the table. And in that line, I always want to make sure that I'm contributing something to the work that my client is doing, and vice versa. It becomes a very two-way relationship.
Absolutely. Dina, what about you? What is it like when you first start working with a new client?
Well, first the same as both Angela and Jennifer, has to have passion. I have to know where I can create value. So that's important. And I have to figure out exactly how I need to build their brand as a business. And it starts with what happens, what has to happen in the here and now. What do we have to do within a year? What do we have to do within 5 years? That's like our goal pretty much for every client that comes into the firm.
Absolutely. Angela, what are you primarily looking for when you're identifying a potential new client to work with?
We love confidence. That's, when people always refer to the it factor, part of it is someone being comfortable in their own skin, knowing who they are and who they're not, being bold at times with their dreams and their vision. I always say, you want dreams that make you feel a little uncomfortable, make you a little scared, because at the end of the day, it keeps you honest. It keeps you focused, So, we like someone that can come in with as much as they can already speak to about their goals as a career, their strengths as a performer, and at the same time, the things that they know they need to be working on so that we can also dialogue about that kind of stuff to see how we can help them achieve those goals.
Absolutely. And Jennifer, what would you say when you're taking on a new client? How do you approach it when it's a performer versus when someone comes in as a singer-songwriter or a musician? Is there a unique approach depending on the client?
You always approach it the same way. Kind of like what Angela and what Dina said as well. It's always good when somebody knows what they want. They have a clear idea of what their career trajectory is. I always like to sit down and the first question I ask is, okay, what's your 5-year goal and what's your 10-year goal? That's how we build our strategies. So it's always helpful when somebody has a clear direction of this is who I want to be in 5 years. This is who I want to be in 10 years. This is what I want to achieve. I want to be in film. I want to be in TV. I want to write a book. I want to, start a speakers series. And then that's how we kind of work backwards. And that's how we build our strategy of picking and choosing certain, I deal with press. So picking and choosing certain writers, editors, outlets, how do we work our way up to that 5-year, 10-year goal? So whether you are a singer, songwriter, actress, influencer, it's pretty much the same path. It just looks a little bit different depending on what their goals are.
Absolutely. Do you find that there's a general threshold that is the right time for a new singer-songwriter or performer to look to work with someone like yourself?
I mean, look, I think PR is an investment, not just financially, but your time as well. As much as I'm dedicated to you, I need clients that are dedicated to me. It's a very kind of hand-in-hand relationship. So, on the expense side, usually we are kind of the last piece of the puzzle because we want to make sure that we can move the needle for you. We're that check, that monthly retainer that's going out every month. We need to make sure that you are generating a return, that you are seeing the needle move with every single thing that we bring to the table. I think that really dictates the time of when to bring somebody on. If you are a 4th or 5th lead on a massive ensemble show, and you may not financially be at a place yet where you are able to spend, the 5, 6, 7 grand a month for somebody personally. It's that point in time that you may see a greater return in working with the studio or network publicist that is, looking out for the show, looking out for the cast. And then when you do kind of get to that project that you're like, okay, this is the direction that I want to go in. This is my career defining moment. That's when, I usually take a lot of meetings and somebody has very clear and concise plans of, this is where I want to go from here. And I'm able to financially commit to bringing on someone in my corner who's going to help me get there. And I'm willing to dedicate the time that it takes to really work hand in hand with my publicist, because the client is in the driver's seat. I'm only as good as the info that my client gives me. So, it needs to be kind of that equal share of commitment in kind of the publicist and the client relationship.
Yeah, I love that. I think too often many enter into a PR relationship where there isn't that clear delineation of deliverables and quantifiable return on investment, and everything you just spoke to is part of being a part of their team and really helping take it to the next level. So I think that's wonderful.
And everybody thinks that, I'm going to get a publicist that's going to make me famous, and it's like, no. We are, as I said before, the last piece of the puzzle. So get yourself a great agent, get yourself that great manager who is fighting for you and in your corner and passionate about you. And, and then the publicist will only come in and just help amplify what you've already built. We work from the foundation that you've created. Yeah. So that's always important to have.
Absolutely. Just like a business, you're not ready to market your service or product until the service or product is ready to go out the door. So absolutely. Dina, on that front, I'm sure in working with many artists and reading many contracts, you've seen some things. I'm positive of that. Of course, being here with SAG-AFTRA, protecting performers is so important. When you're taking on a new client, how does that relationship usually start? Are they bringing something to you right out of the gate? Do they know they just need support? How does that generally work?
They usually have a contract. That's how it starts. Or they are being referred to us by someone we work with a lot, like an agent, a PR person, a manager. If they're big enough and they have those people in place, they're usually referred to us if they need an upgrade in their legal counsel. But even before that, usually because they have a contract, and we have a rule at our firm that none of our clients can sign anything except an autograph for a fan unless we approve it. That's the golden rule.
I love that. That's great. Well, in a more general sense, as far as thinking about your best clients, and I think in going back to Angela on this, what is something that you've identified has really made that relationship work between you and your client? If you could think back to maybe a trait or a specific scenario.
Honestly, communication every day, all day. When we can consider the volume of representation that we've done with some clients for 10, 15, 20-year relationships, that's about communication, because there's highs and lows in your career. Everybody's not going to always want you. Your marketability changes as the marketplace changes. And we're going for that ride with you because we're communicating. As times people check in and we go, you're amazing. It's just right now, they're just not looking for your type as much. You're amazing. Be as great as you can be. I always say, be as undeniable. Undeniable is your performance level being so great that people create for you, that people go, wow, I really want him in this project. Let me find something. Let me redirect this role and make it a little bit more about this person, because I really want to work with this person. So as much as you can make yourself the best talent you can be, when we're working with you, we're telling you what's going on in the street. We're communicating the day-to-day grind element of it as we're seeing it, as we're going, okay, let's build this, let's change that, let's alter this. Or, let's fall back for a little bit. Let's not white knuckle what's happening right now, because this part is out of your control. And so that they can also keep a healthy mental state about how they're looking at their career. So the communication is so important. I would always tell people, don't think without me. Where Dina says, don't sign anything, I always say, don't think without me. Because the reality is when people are able to sort of check in appropriately, they can get a lot of stuff out of their head that could be unnecessary. And so we want to be as proactive and productive by at times dispelling some of the things that don't apply to them in their career, and being able to say, yes, that's a thing, but that's not relevant for you right now. So let's not stress over that. But if you're looking for something productive to do, let's focus on this. And that way, keeping that positive energy moving just with communication has saved a lot of wonderful relationships.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for all of those watching now, I mean, the commitment even to paying attention to this panel is a part of that, going out into the industry and learning and engaging and, and bringing that back to your team. Absolutely. I love that. Now, Dina, when someone books one of these jobs, or let's say they're releasing their first single, whatever it might be, what have you noticed is the number one most consistent aspect of contracts that is a big red flag that maybe new talent comes and brings to you on a most consistent basis?
Well, I mean, it's all over the map. There's not one issue that's bad for everybody. I mean, it all depends. Like, I can give you, in the African American community or the Black community, my Black clients, the mixtape is bad, okay? Because you don't see mixtapes in contracts with white artists. You only see mixtape deliverables and contracts in Black artists, which just seeks to have Black artists deliver another product to the record company in addition to the albums that they have to deliver. So, that's a red flag. I don't like that. I hate the fact that any contract where they want to own your publishing or have any of your active rights, like a record contract that seeks to control your touring, your merchandising, your sponsorships and endorsements. I hate all that. We don't have any conflicts of interest at my firm. So I am very, I advocate for these things, not just in business, but also industry-wide. Like, back to this other issue, I'm on the executive leadership committee, the Black Music Action Coalition. And one of the things that we're doing is making a call to the industry to ban the words master recording, which is based in systemic racism from the 60s and the 70s. And instead, we are changing terms and contracts to say sound recordings or original sound recording. So I can go through a contract and tell you that I hate every single page of it, because that would not be a lie. I mean, here's the thing. I represent creators, okay? I represent mostly music artists and creators in the areas of fashion, beauty, and lifestyle, executives, anybody adverse to a record company or a publishing company or anybody like that. We represent them. And generally speaking, contracts are bad for creative people, but we know we have to do it because companies are not going to pay our clients money unless we agree to certain things contractually, whether it's obligating ourselves to post or to deliver music or to write songs, or to, whatever. So we understand the contracts are necessary. But I always go into a contract, that I just don't like them to begin with. I like to be able to have my clients just fire whoever is terrible at their job.
Yep. I think that's wonderful. And a word from the wise here, you see all of these stories, horror stories in the music industry of, Taylor Swift having to re-record her music again just to have the rights, So it sounds like a great way to intercept that is to work with someone like yourself early on, as soon as you receive that contract, to make sure there's nothing that holds you to it in perpetuity and, fundamentally relinquishes rights.
I mean, that issue is the re-recording restriction. So generally speaking, when you enter into a record contract, the record company owns all the sound recordings that you make in connection with the record contract during the term. Of course, I love my clients to be able to own their own recordings and license them to the record company. That would be my preference. But, to put in all the money for marketing and promotion and all of that, record companies, and if you don't have a lot of leverage, they own everything. They own the sound recordings. And the way record deals work is that you're not able to re-record any of the musical compositions embodied on those sound recordings for a period of 7 years after the release of the last album under the recording agreement. So, of course, when Taylor Swift, the 7 years was up, the first thing she did was run and re-record some of her albums, which a lot of my clients have done as well. And I love that. I love when they can do that. There's nothing more gratifying to me than have my clients compete with the record company and win.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So, Jennifer, being an agency owner myself and, us being kind of cousin services in a sense, I'm very familiar with the interface with, how you have to work with the intellectual property attorney, with the agency, with the manager. How do you personally, you and Jonesworks, work with the team for your clients?
Of course, we're all part of the wheel. I mean, in order for the wheel to function and to move properly, we all have to work together. When your agent and manager are getting you into certain rooms, positioning you in certain ways, we're always an asset. I like to think of myself as an asset to the agent or manager, because there's a lot that we can do in terms of public perception, and also targeting very certain outlets that we know that casting directors, producers are reading, that we can help position our client in a certain way if they're going up for a very specific role, or if they are being, needing to be perceived in a certain light. We can really tap into media to tell that story for us. And that can then be used as an asset, whether we put together, an EPK, an electronic press kit, that, just kind of adds to the materials that your agent or your manager are using. I think in terms of how we work with lawyers, I think that we work very closely with lawyers because we are on the ground with our client and are aware of a lot of their needs. We work with lawyers all the time to work in, certain PR deliverables, certain hair and makeup and transportation needs, and anything that we can squeeze into a contract, that will kind of help make some of our begging and pleading after the fact easier. We always like to be kind of in the know, in the ground when these contracts are being constructed and put together. But yeah, I mean, our relationship is with the team. It's always important that you have a good working relationship and that we are a united front on behalf of the talent. I consult all the time with agents and managers before giving a recommendation to my client, just to ensure that, we're approaching something as a united front and that the talent is not getting, certain opinions and certain voices. It's always important that we're kind of all on the same page. We're kind of one team, one dream, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And being so ingrained in an up and coming rising talents team, I'm sure, hopefully not, but I'm sure you've dealt with some crisis management situations. When and if crisis happens, how does your team normally address that from a public relations perspective?
Sure. It always starts with a conversation. A question that you asked earlier of kind of what's the most important thing between a talent and their team or their rep. For me, it's trust. I need to know that when I'm sitting with a client who's in a crisis situation, that they're telling me the truth, and I'm getting all sides of the story, not just their side of the story, because that's how I'm able to do my job. Then we sit down with the agent, manager, especially the lawyer. The lawyer is usually the most important person here because, I deal with media and I deal with the court of public opinion, but I always have to make sure that anything that I'm saying or doing on behalf of my client has been vetted by a lawyer, always. And then comes the conversation. And it's the art of the public apology. And sometimes, and this is where I think that a lot of people get it wrong, sometimes it's best to not say anything. Sometimes it's okay to step away for a few and let it breathe. I see a lot of people that just get aggressive into defending their truth without understanding and realizing the depth of the situation that they're in. And a lot of people make it a lot worse on themselves. So it's always smart to take a breath, have a conversation with your team, lay out all the facts, vet it by a lawyer always, and then put together the right approach. And with each person, it's different. There isn't an algorithm or a formula that you can apply to any crisis situation. It's completely different per person, per situation. You have to be mindful of that. Just because somebody approached something a certain way, you can kind of use that as your litmus test, but you need to understand your audience. You need to understand the depth of the situation. You need to ensure that things that you're saying is not digging you in a deeper hole, and understand that it's okay to sometimes not say anything and to take a step back before finding that appropriate time to speak your truth and address the situation head on.
Absolutely. Well, kind of tying everything together, intellectual property, public relations, distribution, the agency side of things. Angela, you and I have had a unique opportunity to work together with Osbrink and TSMA for many years and look at the content creation component of being a talent, the distribution component, self-distribution through social media. From Osbrink's perspective, from your perspective, how have you seen that change over the last couple of years as far as talent actually creating their own content, distributing it, and then getting the attention of those in the industry, like you mentioned before?
Well, it's adding fire. I mean, for those who are comfortable, sharing part of their truth, sharing part of their lives and connecting with people. I mean, during the pandemic, so many people were clamoring to connect with people. So those in social media were getting that much more views, because people were going to social media, part of a self-soothing thing, part of the connecting with the world thing, their information, their knowledge. So at the end of the day, it became almost like another form of television for so many people. It exploded in a lot of ways. So if you had a presence on social media, it helped you. If you had a positive presence where you were engaging with people, it was helping your career, because there's so many studios, so many different advertisers, so many different people who look to people's social media. They look to see if what they have is offensive. It looks to see if it aligns with their brands and where they're willing to invest in people and money. They look for ideas, your creativity. They're feeding off of your positive energy often and going, wow, I think this would be a great relationship. So those who had really comfortable at just sort of putting it out there, it really helped, because at the end of the day, nowadays, people want to know, like, is there another side of you that's going to be concerning? Is there another side of you that's going to, be a problem for the money and the time they're willing to put into you? And so when they look to your social media, it often can really boost your career. It can give you another level of, wow, and this is also the roles they play, but this is this thing that they do at home, and it's pretty cool. Or these extra skills they had, and I had no idea. It makes you more of a tangible person, which gives us more marketability for you.
Absolutely. And SAG-AFTRA does have contracts, of course, that cover all of that, which has been such a wonderful growth in the last couple of years, from the influencer agreement to the short project agreement, new media. There's a lot of opportunity there for someone to create their own content, distribute it, find that team, then work with you and the team as a whole to really make some waves with that. On the intellectual property side, question for you, Dina. I know in working with musicians, songwriters, artists, performers in general, we're in this new age of digital. And I say new, it's been a little while now, but relatively new, where SVOD platforms are major competitors in the space. It's no longer networks and studios. The tectonic plates have shifted. With that being said, are you consulting your clients on how to negotiate with Netflix, with Amazon, with various different streaming services when it comes to things like rights for their usage of their song or their music, or rights for their intellectual property in general, their likeness?
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, every artist that we have has a record company distributing their intellectual property, their recordings. Okay. So those record companies have, license agreements with the 47 DSPs worldwide. And they also have licenses in effect with Netflix and Amazon and all these other different, video digital platforms as well. So we don't have to get into those issues. My job is negotiating the record deal. Any client that wants to put up their music independently, we very rarely represent those clients. We do have a few independent artists. They're relatively large now. They used to be signed to big record companies, and we've gotten them out of there, and now they do their own thing, like Tinashe and some artists like that we represent. But we don't get into negotiating licenses with DSPs. If the client's going to do a documentary or a show on Netflix, we do have clients that cross over, like Kiefer Sutherland, Hilary Duff, and Jamie Lynn Spears. They cross over to film and TV. We do negotiate those deals, but the agent is very involved. So here's how it works in the world of entertainment. In the areas of film and TV, as Angela will tell you, the agents are very, 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 very involved. They are the power brokers in that field. In the music industry, the power brokers are the lawyers and the managers. Agents are very important. They're part of our team, but they're largely in the live music space, booking tours, strategizing tours, figuring out all of that landscape. A lot of the agencies do offer, other services like, branding and film and TV. So when your clients cross over, so that's also very, very helpful. But when we're on the front lines of negotiating deals for the clients, it's really negotiating the deals as it pertains to those companies to disseminate that IP as a whole.
I see, absolutely. And you spoke to leverage earlier, talent having leverage, in their audience or in their music. When you are negotiating, whether it be with the record label or, working with your client on that front, what are you primarily taking into consideration as said leverage? Social media presence, previous history of music distribution and numbers. What would you say is the most important?
All of that. I mean, during the pandemic, I picked up a lot of clients that were huge TikTok kids, TikTokers. And, TikTok is a fabulous platform to look for an amazing, talented creators, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, and incredible. And I picked up some clients on TikTok. Some of them are just, influencers in the areas of fashion and beauty, which is also really busy and lucrative, as Jennifer will tell you. And some of them are real music artists like Jaden Hostler and Ian Dior. I mean, they're great. They're songwriters and they're recording artists, and so that's been really fun for us in the music industry to have that. And by the way, TikTok did it right. So one of the things that we're very concerned in the music industry are these new technologies that pop up and they think that they don't have to license music, like Roblox. We just sued the hell out of Roblox, all the music publishers and songwriters, because they seem to think that the Copyright Act, some nebulous portion that I can't find anywhere, doesn't require them to pay. So they got sued, and now, that's how that goes. But, TikTok very early on, reached out and said, look, we know we have to license music, okay, but we're gonna, we want to get this platform up off the ground and start these discussions with you, because we don't know how the licensing is going to happen. And the publishers and the songwriters kind of like, let that happen, because that's another thing in the music industry that we like to do. We learned from Napster, when you fight the new technologies, you lose everywhere. I mean, Napster came and ate our lunch, and the record companies fought them, which was the stupidest thing they could have done. Okay, because we saw the avalanche coming. And instead of fighting them, we should have embraced them. The music community should have embraced them and learned how to work with them, because that's where we are now. Music consumption is now streaming. Like, we don't really sell CDs and vinyl records anymore, except for like nostalgia basis and merchandising opportunities. But other than that, it's a streaming world. So when these new technologies just pop up and they're arrogant and they just tell people that they don't have to license music, and then they're licensing they have your client's music all in their platform, it's going to be an issue. But look, at the same time, they pop up and they raise their hand and say, we want your support. We don't know how it's going to look, but if we start talking early on and figure out how we're going to pay for everything, that would be a good thing.
Absolutely. You mentioned TikTok as just an example of a platform that's doing it the right way, licensing music from more established artists. But TikTok is also a great platform for developing new talent and having new music actually get found for the first time. So Jennifer, a question for you on that. Working with influencers, this new world here that I often call the Wild West, and I'm kind of laughing because I knew it would come to social media. It's my whole life. But working with influencers and engaging with influencers as your client, how has that experience been? Those that pop up on TikTok and now suddenly are in the public eye in the masses.
Oh, it's a blast. It's a blast. There's no rules. You see these creators who are rewriting the rules of and I hate to say becoming famous, but becoming some of the most influential voices that people are listening to and watching and reading and, you know, emulating. I mean, these are the people that are really influencing our culture, right? And so they've rewritten their own rules for their own platforms. And then we as publicists, we got to catch up. We got to move with the times and bring something to the table that's going to take these creators to the next level. You know, back to what I said earlier, where we always want to make sure that we're bringing something to the table that moves the needle. That's even more so for these entrepreneurs who are creating their own platform and their own brand and are reaching numbers of people that we can't match with traditional media. So, okay, if we can't match their numbers with traditional media, what can we bring to the table that's going to either bring in a new audience or elevate them and open up a door that wouldn't be open to them through their own platforms? You know, we want to get creative. We have the ability to put together really big ideas and cool campaign plans and tap into their audience as a marketing tool that's only going to amplify. I keep saying that word, but it's the truth. It's only going to amplify whatever they have already built on their own platform. And we're bringing in a new audience and helping take them to a new level that they can't take them to themselves. So it's been fun. You know, I signed one of the first OG YouTubers about 9-10 years ago now. And it was before, I think my firm I was working with at the time looked at me like I was crazy. And, she's still a longtime client and we've traveled the world together, and she's achieved some incredible things because we were figuring it out together. And this was when we had to explain to people that YouTube was more than just a platform for funny dog videos, that there was a value, a dollar sign that you could put on these subscribers that were buying whatever my client was selling, that, wanted to be my client. And, she had such an authentic relationship with her audience. That's what social media is. It's a two-way form, flow of conversation. So how do we tap into this and take her to a level where, now she's making money in her sleep? And she can do whatever she wants to do because she has this foundation, this incredible foundation that we've been able to build together. And yeah, it's a fun world. It's a fun world out there if you know how to tap into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I've always said is that talent comes first. I'm sure that resonates with many watching here, beating sweat, thinking about being an influencer. One thing, Angela, we've spoken about in the past is that I know that resonates with the Osbrink agency and with your work, and talent coming first. So in working in this new influencer world and signing, young talent that have large audiences, or someone coming from TikTok for the first time wanting to be an actor, I know there's a rigorous vetting process on the talent side, but what are you really looking for with someone who's so raw and so new, but has this huge captive audience?
Well, just openness, truthfully, because our value to any actor is to be able to help fill in these blanks. There's times where people are exceptions to certain rules, and that may get you to a certain point. It may cost you for a while, but if you're trying to build a career, if you're trying to build wealth in this town, if you're trying to have longevity as a career, then as many things that you can do is what you should be fanning. So not just putting all your eggs in that one basket. So we're big on, okay, if you're trying to cross over to television and film, then yeah, if that's not your first home, then let's train. Let's get, some proper know-how. So when you get on set, you can blend in appropriately with that cast. They'll love the visibility that you bring because you're a recognizable face, and they love that. They love to know that they're bringing the audience, but at the same time, you want to bring that performance. You want to be able to, appropriately bring that extra craft to the table so that people will really further engage and invest in you, in your brand. Because that way they're going, oh, wow, and they can do this, and wow, they can do that. Often we're trying to tell people, dance with what brought you. If there's a social media element that brought you to the table, then don't disrespect what brought you to the table, but just know how to build a bridge. You're building a bridge to the next thing and being able to maintain that original thing that really helped you. And then at the same time, expand. Look at all the wonderful artists that started off doing one thing, that got visibility doing one thing, But as they rolled out all these different other things, they became a beast. The J-Los of the world are a real thing, because reality is when she did it, most people didn't understand the value of all the things that she was doing. And they can look back now and go, wow, in a way, she was a maverick as a woman, as an artist who can bring so many different people to her brand. And they followed and put money behind a variety of things she did. So as much as we can do that, that's what we're trying to do, just helping them expand appropriately, but at the same time, continue that value so that people will go, yeah, I'll support that because she's also great in this and also great in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, you have these rising talents that are multifaceted, multi-hyphenate, and have their own audience now. It's a really exciting time to be a performer. Dina, are you noticing a rise in inquiries from independent artists, more so now than maybe 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, because of the dissemination of music is much simpler, that we don't have to ship thousands of CDs to other places in the world. Artists really have a lot to their disposal as far as like, independently putting their stuff up. So we have companies like Empire Music, which you can go through, that has licenses with all the DSPs. You have The Orchard, which is now owned by Sony, but it's really an independent distribution company. We have STEM, we have AWOL. So we have all these different distribution companies that you can go to that can get your music out there. Whereas before, we didn't have that. When you represent a talent, if you didn't have a record company that was going to invest in printing up the CDs and shipping the CDs, you really were regulated to like selling them at your shows or in mom and pop retail stores locally or in cities that you tour. But now it's really great for artists because we have all these ways to get our music out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, as mentioned, it's a phenomenal time and there's an immense amount of opportunity, but it can be overwhelming for many of those watching. Of course, there's so much that you can do. How do you know where to start and put your energy? I know we're coming up on time here, and I want to make sure we transition over to some of those questions that are coming from the audience in a Q&A portion of the chat here today. But this was wonderful.
It sure was wonderful. Thank you guys. Really, it's a good conversation. People are soaking it up. We have gotten a lot of questions, so we're going to get through as many as we can in the time that we have. So I'm going to start off with, is there an order in terms of, putting together a team? If you can take things only one step at a time, how do you look at this?
Typically people get the agent first as they're trying to, build a career and create a fan of work, and then go, and then usually build from there. But it all depends.
Yeah.
That's in film and TV, generally speaking. I agree with Angela. In music, it's usually the lawyer or the manager.
Great. So this is sort of a long one. I was signed by a small but legit agency, except I wasn't signed. They put that in quotes. I'd met with agents over Zoom. My manager knows the agency. They're listed on my IMDb. They're submitting me to projects, but I haven't actually booked with them yet. But I never actually signed paperwork. I asked for a contract. They sent emails a few times. They say they'll be sending me a contract soon. It's been several months. It's been 3 months. What would you do without being rude? Should I think that this is normal? Should I just accept it? What do you think?
Great question. And I also even speak for the times. During the pandemic, there's a lot of companies that pulled their belts a little tight, and they may have let go of a certain amount of support staff. So the way that they would have otherwise conducted business and efficiently knock things out has got hampered, as they're a little overwhelmed. So I would even fall back on, if they have a manager, consulting with the manager and saying, hey, do you know what the pulse is of that company right now? Is it that this is what typically happens and they're just sort of waiting me to work a job and then they present me with paperwork? Or is it that they're just a little behind, for lack of better words, as they're sort of scrambling and trying to deal with their day-to-day? But I mean, truthfully, if it's something that matters to them, then they have every right to speak up and be honest about what makes them feel comfortable, because that's important, that people appropriately advocate for themselves and representation actually hear those concerns.
Great. Thank you very much, Angela. The next question we have from a member is what, hold on here. How do I identify agents that are open to representing older performers who are re-entering the business?
I would just overall say you can Google so much information about so many different companies, and so many companies on their own website are really open about the demographic that that their strengths are in. But I always say put it out there, because truth be told, that a lot of times it's hard to define that they only do this, they only do that. If there's an openness to what they're looking for on their website, throw caution to the wind and put it out there. If you know that that company represents people in your demographic, go for it. Because during the pandemic especially, there's a lot of people who moved away. There's a lot of people who chose not to act anymore, but maybe their IMDb isn't updated. Maybe, some of this upkeep has gotten a little lax for a lot of representation that's clear about their intention. So put it out there and just know that there's a lot of people who need talent.
I hope you don't mind, Rebecca. I'm just going to put on my panelist hat for a second. And correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, but we're now in this time where it's harder and harder to go to theaters to identify new talent. It's harder and harder to go to a movie and find someone for the first time. Maybe you see them in a show, but how many shows are there? So my thoughts on that would be, as an older performer, do great work and put yourself out there in the best way you can. To Angela's point, really sharpen your public-facing digital profiles, your IMDb, your casting networks, everything that is publicly out there. Make sure that that's in a position that you can be identified as a quality performer. And then I know it's tough, and everyone's been saying this probably your entire career, but create your own work. Create work that showcases you in the exact roles that you feel you most thrive in. And the representatives will find you. If you put it out and you work hard to get it out there, you put it on social media platforms and you're engaging with your community, showing up to things like this, sending out inquiries in an appropriate fashion, it's going to happen, but it comes down to the work. You got to set that foundation.
And if you don't mind me piggybacking, be your own publicist. Know how to pitch yourself. Do your research. Again, it comes to that investment. You have to remember to invest in yourself. When I get an email or a cold call, the first thing I'm going to do is Google this person. So make sure that your platforms reflect what you're wanting to achieve, but then also do your research. Reach out to, Google and look up and ask around and talk to people about, reputations of agents and managers and lawyers. People will tell you. So, take a lot of time and really finding the right person for your team. It's worth it.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions that sort of fall into the bucket of people transitioning either from one area to another or one art form to another, maybe a singer who's also doing voiceover work or otherwise, where how do they manage those kind of bigger transitions? And so especially transitions later in life and being concerned, one of the questions speaks directly to the concerns that a lot of this, the industry is geared to people who are starting out at a younger age. And do you have additional advice? You've actually provided some good that would apply to anybody, but for people that are coming in at a later point in life, is there a way that they should structure that and say to maybe even account for the gaps that they might have that might have been full with other things? What do you say to that one?
Well, I personally have found clients all over the place, whether it been submissions, whether it been referrals, and I would always be open to that person that at times had a whole other life, had a whole nother career, maybe had this playing in the back of their heads of, I think I want to try to pursue this. I've had clients that retired from whole other jobs and was like, you know what? I have the time, the freedom, and the extra income. I'm going for it. And just that honesty about how they're ready to focus their energy right now on this new dream. I love that, because at the end of the day, part of the problem is there's just times where they're living another life, have all these responsibilities. They don't even have the time or the effort to respectfully pursue it. And now they're ready. So anybody at their point in their life where they're just ready, we're just like, let's go, go do, train like this, let's shoot like that if you need more materials. But just that focus and that passion carries at any demographic.
That's great. Thank you, Angela. So here's a question we have from a member that says, I've been working with an agent for the past year. She's great. I've noticed that, we're not going to say who it is, so don't worry. I have noticed that many of the roles I'm asked to submit for are also breakdowns that are publicly available on casting platforms. Is it common that agents work for talent that they're basically using those platforms, or do more reputable longer-term agents have other sources?
Well, for the most part, people can self-submit. A lot of people can self-submit, but from the casting perspective, they're looking for us to vent. They're looking for us to have a clear point of view of the person that we know or the people that we think are appropriate. They at times have their seas of people who are unrepresented, who at times also fit the roles. They're open to those people. That helps their cause. But at the same time, as agents and representatives, we're also trying to vent the projects to know what's best for you, what's financially better for you, depending on what the project is. So we're looking at it from a business standpoint, not just can you do the role. And that's part of your now, your value now, and the things that can affect your career in the long term. Those commitments that you're signing do matter. So that's part of the point of view of an agent submitting, not just a talent submitting themselves.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of people don't necessarily think of it in that great way, Angela. One of the questions we have is a person basically saying, look, they've got, solid credentials and their agent has only gotten them a couple auditions in the last year. Well, it's been quite a year. So I don't know if I would judge anything on this last year, but what is a professional way to ask my agent if we're not a good fit? And they don't want to get a reputation as being difficult or otherwise. They just don't know. They just don't know how to have that conversation. And I think that would apply not just to agents and getting auditions, but it'd be great in terms of if sometimes the team isn't the right team and you need to move along. How do you have those conversations?
That's huge, because that's a main question that a lot of actors or creatives struggle with. How to communicate with their representation. I always just tell people, you're hiring us to do a job. So our job is to service you. Our job is to help you. But at the same time, you want to come to the table with, hey, I'm just checking in. Is there anything you need from me? Because there's been so many times that when we're struggling to get you auditions, we know, we are thinking about you guys and often collaborating, trying to figure you out, and at times try to be able to get that fire really moving. And so at times when people assume that we're not working for them, assume that we're not thinking of them, it can be a little hurtful, and so for the most part, we're people too. When people come to the table with, I notice things have, maybe not as been as busy for me, I would love to hear if there's any thoughts you have, because there's times when we have all these thoughts and it's a great opportunity for us to get it out of our head and go, wow, so-and-so, maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that, to switch things up, to get things going. Or for us to be honest and go, I really thought I had more room for you and I don't want to hold you up. There's clients we've let go appropriately because we didn't want to feel like we were shelving them, because we saw that we just didn't have the time that we thought we were going to have to be able to really do the job that we really want to do. So having those honest conversations, initiating those messages at least gets the conversation moving, and that's half the battle.
Anybody else want to jump in there? That was such a terrific answer.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that, because I think that either Angela or Dina said this at the beginning. It's about communication. If you're unhappy with what I'm bringing to the table, or if you did an interview that I think is incredible, but you're unhappy with it, I can only do my job as good as what the client is telling me and the direction that they're giving me. Any client forgets that they're actually the one in the driver's seat. So if you're unhappy, tell me. If you don't like something or don't like, a strategy that I put together, or, aren't confident that the direction that I'm going in is right for you, I need to know. because I'm going to still voice my opinion. You know, you're paying for my time and for my expertise and my advice. I'm going to give it to you. But, you know, if you're unhappy with what I'm bringing to the table, even after we've had these conversations, then yes, I mean, then it can be a mutual decision that maybe we're not the right fit. But things will not change unless you speak up. You know, we're not mind readers. If you're unhappy with something, you know, we won't know until you say something. So if you're uncomfortable to say something to your agent or manager, then maybe that's not the right relationship, because you need to be able to have these hard conversations. It's not personal, it's business at the end of the day. We all have a job to do. We all want to grow together. So, you know, that kind of level of whether it's fear or whether it is, you know, you don't want to upset anyone. There really isn't room for that in a talent and rep relationship.
I like the idea of, things will not change unless you speak up. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was just going to piggyback on that. I think it's coming into it with reasonable expectations as well. You know, we're, as Jennifer said very eloquently, we're all working on your behalf. We passionately care about your career. We wouldn't take you on, at least anyone legitimate wouldn't, if it wasn't the case. So knowing that, it does take a little time, like as if you hired an assistant or you hired a team or, you know, someone in-house, it takes a little time for them to learn the ropes, get to know you, figure out that working relationship, get some of those execution and deliverables, you know, to you. And, you know, it depends on what team member you're speaking about. You know, some things are faster than others, but just, you know, reasonable expectations coming into the relationship and looking to build it for the long term, you know, looking for that team that's going to help you take your career not only to the next level, but through the trajectory. Because, you know, the best relationships, you know, we've had are the strategic partnerships we've had from the very beginning, you know, like Osbrink, for example. So, you know, that will carry with you, and you'll start to find it's a very small town. So yeah, just honesty, communication, and reasonable expectations.
Yeah. We have just one other question that I think was just so perfect since we are talking about building a team, what if your team doesn't work super well together? Are there things you can do sort of as the center of that team to help that happen? They also mentioned, we had a couple questions about blurring lines between agents, managers, et cetera, all the different pieces of the puzzle, you know, the lawyer, the publicist, the social media, the agent, everything together. How do you approach that? See, I can't imagine that you all wouldn't work perfectly with everybody. So I know you have no experience on this one, but what would you suggest for people who run into a situation where
that's a problem? That's a problem.
Yeah,
that's
go ahead, Dina, jump in.
Yeah, that's a problem, because you got to figure out what the issues are, and that's a problem. And you're in a team and someone is not a team player, it can bring down the entire organization. So generally speaking, everybody pretty much works together. If there's somebody that's not working well, it's usually 9 times out of 10 that person. And that's been my experience.
That's great. Angela, Jennifer, did you want to add anything?
We got a job to do. It's our job to work well together. If there's someone who is refusing to give other members of the team the respect that they deserve and allow them to interject their expertise, then the problem is you. And you know, you need to think about removing yourself. But yeah, I mean, I said this before, you got to be a united front. You can't put the client in the middle of egos or butting heads. You know, it's just not worth it. So for anybody. So yeah, that's my ad.
Well, I mean, I always say, don't forget, this is your career. So be careful who you're hiring, and often consult. I mean, if you're building the team, then when you're taking meetings with different other entities that you want to add to the team, consult with the team that you already love and go, hey, do you know anything about them? Or do you work well with them? Because there are times where there's certain people who we've had run-ins with that are very difficult. And if they would have consulted with us, we would have been like, hey, just be honest, they don't always do this well with us, and be honest about us playing our strengths and allowing them to do their thing. But respectfully, they take the cues from you. As the actor, you are running the team. So when you speak up for your own career and say, okay, to this other person that maybe not playing so well, I need you to back on that. I need you to back up respectfully and allow so-and-so to run the ball on that. Then they have to take cues from you because you're the artist. You know, we're at the end of the day, all servicing you. So when you can also appropriately tell the team what you need, and they have to be able to respect that and listen, or you have to determine, is this person still the right person to keep on the team?
Yeah, and really empowering yourself to know your worth, to know the team's worth with respect, all of that. It's so important. We are out of time, which is we could have talked a lot longer because you guys have so much great information. And I want to just thank you all for being here. Ryan and Dina, Angela and Jennifer, you just were incredible. And, you know, I want to thank you for the information, because I think people being able to hear this gets them, you know, they feel more comfortable having both the empowering conversations and occasionally the tough ones. Communication is key. So I want to thank everybody also who has been tuning in each week for our President's Task Force Education, Outreach, and Engagement live streams, or PTEOE. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the SAG-AFTRA YouTube channel while you're here so you can get updates on all the great content we're posting. And again, everybody stay safe, and we will see you next time. And a big shout out to our interpreters and captioners for their great work today. So thank you all. On behalf of SAG-AFTRA, we'll see you next week.